Hello everyone, I'm David Seymour, Regional Chemicals and Natural Resources Lead for Essentia here in the Gulf. Today, myself and my colleague Gaurav will discuss disruptive technologies in agribusiness and how these technologies are impacting the fertilizers industry. To set some context, we know that the majority of fertilizers produced in the Gulf are exported to other regions, primarily Asia and the Americas. Hence, we've deliberately focused on global agribusiness trends as they have a direct impact on the fertilizer producers in the Gulf. Speaking about trends, agriculture as an industry is facing a diverse set of challenges. It is one of the biggest consumers of resources and also one of the largest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions, which is leading to climate change globally. It is also predicted that between 15 and 20% of future crop produce will also be lost to the events triggered by climate change. We also have an increasing number of people to feed, as the global population is expected to reach 10 billion by 2050. In addition to this growth in population, we'll see a burgeoning middle class, which will be more demanding in terms of specific food products. With a larger population to feed, we will also have a limited arable land supply, as around 33% of global farmland remains moderately to highly degraded. Here, excessive use of agrochemicals, including fertilizers, is one of the key drivers behind lower land productivity. Lastly, there is immense food loss and agri-waste on the farms and in the agri-supply chain as well. Here also, the agri-waste includes the excess agrochemicals that degrade the soil and water resources. Next slide, please. To add to these agri-challenges, the end consumers in the new era are very demanding. They are looking for more nutritious, higher quality food. There is an increasing demand for organic and vegan food. The organic category itself has been growing in double digits for at least the last 5 years. And according to recent surveys, 85% of consumers are willing to pay for premium or preferred food products, which is not only high quality food, but consumers also expect transparency around suppliers, product origins, and sustainability practices. We're witnessing a similar trend for industrial consumers, where companies are committing to sustainable sourcing or that they have net zero greenhouse gas targets. We're also seeing new innovations in this area. For example, Pepsi's Walker brand in the UK has introduced a new circular potato that uses potato peelings to manufacture a low carbon, nutrient-rich fertilizer. Use of this fertilizer is expected to reduce Walker's carbon emissions from growing potatoes by around 70%. I will now invite my colleague Gaurav, who will talk about how regional policies are also impacting the industry and how novel technologies are being used to address these agri-challenges. Over to you, Gaurav.
Thank you very much, David. Yes, we are seeing a strong push by policies and innovation from various countries in terms of driving sustainable agriculture. First, if we talk about Europe, we have the European Green Deal, and we have some very particular targets in the European Green Deal, where they would want to reduce the fertilizer use by at least 20% by 2030, at the same time reduce the nutrient losses by at least 50%. They also want to limit or reduce the pesticides used by 50% by 2030. And then there is also a mandate of having 25% of EU's farmland under organic farming by 2030. They also intend to develop a sustainable food labeling framework that covers the nutritional, climate, environmental, and social aspects of the food, which gives a very good platform for new era customers to make their decisions about which food to buy. Similarly, we have the US Department of Agriculture, and they're strongly focusing on increasing their agricultural production by 40% by 2050. But while doing so, they would also want to reduce the environmental footprint of US agriculture by 50% till 2050. And reducing nutrient loss and the chemicals runoff is also a component of this initiative. Then we also have China, where they're trying to limit the use of the fertilizers and pesticides used by 2020. Plus, they are also giving tax breaks and exemptions for more sustainable variety of fertilizers like bioorganic fertilizers. Now we'll see how the new technologies are addressing these agribusiness challenges that David talked about. And in the process, they are also disrupting the conventional agrochemical business models, both for fertilizers and crop production companies. For this, we have also developed a disruptability index that shows the various sub-segments of chemicals industry and how vulnerable to disruptions they are in the future. And it is worth noting that uh, in this analysis, we have seen that fertilizers and pesticides, they are one of the most vulnerable subsegments of chemical industry that are likely to be disrupted in the future. And it is not a surprise because we are seeing intervention of a lot of digital technologies and new innovation in agriculture. And that is why we are going to see this disruption. Now let's talk about some of these top technologies which we are witnessing in agribusiness. The first one is precision agriculture, and it needs no introduction uh, because it is a set of technologies which is being used around the globe to increase the crop yields while using fewer crop inputs like fertilizers or pesticides. And it is a combination of a varied set of technologies varying from sensing, which includes in-field sensors or remote sensing using satellites or drones. Then we have the agricultural robots, which we can use for spraying the fertilizers or the pesticides. Then we have the drones. These can also be used for application of crop inputs, and they can also be used for imagery using the camera which are fitted on the drones. Then we have the satellite imaging and navigation systems like GPS and GNSS, where uh, these technologies help in collection of geo-referenced data sent via signals from satellites, and they help to identify accurate field position for precise placement of seeds and agrochemicals. Next, we have the variable rate technologies, and they involve applying varying rates of inputs such as fertilizers or pesticides and seeds wherever these are required in optimum quantities, which helps to maximize the input efficiency. Then we have the mobile phones and handheld devices, and they help in getting the real-time insights or farm advisories for the farmers. And last but not the least, and very important, is data intelligence and analytics. Again, these technologies, they process farm data from satellite or drone imagery or in-field sensors. And with help of this data, they generate meaningful insights for the farmers. Now, these technologies or combination of these technologies can be used for various farm management applications, as we have shown. And I think the most important point worth noting here is that the impact of these technologies and applications on the use of crop inputs or the fertilizers is that there is very precise placement of fertilizers in optimum quantities, which ultimately leads to reduce the use of crop inputs and also helps in reducing the chemicals runoff from the farms. In fact, it is worth mentioning that many of the large fertilizer companies like Yara and Nutrien, they're also taking significant strides in precision or digital farming. So Yara is already exploring technologies such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, and in-field data to develop the digital farming platforms for the farmers. And Nutrien too uh, launched Ag platform in 2018, and now they have collaborated with BASF's Zarvio digital farming solutions, and they're going to develop more portfolio of solutions in this area. The next interesting technology is the controlled environment agriculture. So this is a novel farming method. We also call it vertical farming, though it is a subset of controlled environment agriculture. And this is particularly exciting as it is helping us to tackle so many challenges faced by conventional agriculture. So we can see the benefits that we can have yields up to 390 times of conventional farming. We can have up to 26 crop turns defying seasons. There are no crop losses due to weather. And it also performs very well on sustainability parameters. So they use up to 95% less water as compared to the conventional farming. most of the startups, they do not use any pesticides at all, and they also use fewer nutrients or the crop inputs in optimum quantities. And lastly, they also reduce the emissions as they have shorter supply chains, and there is lesser food loss as well. Now, uh, I think with COVID, we also saw that there was a lot of disruption of food supply chains, and uh, uh, I think controlled environment agriculture or vertical farming, it generated a lot of interest in these times, and we are seeing a lot of traction from governments of different countries who are trying to invest a lot of money to create the controlled environment farming ecosystems. So I think here UAE and Singapore, they are great examples because they depend a lot on the imported food, and that is why they are also investing in setting up the vertical farming or controlled environment agriculture ecosystems. Here, I think for the fertilizer players, the most important point to note is that definitely we do not use pesticides in these vertical farms, especially in the top companies, but there is a requirement of a set of nutrients and micronutrients in these vertical farms. And perhaps, I mean, right now we are seeing a lot of small players getting to this space, but as we see more scale, there could be a possibility of play of larger fertilizer companies as well. Then we have the biotech companies developing the soil microbiome alternatives for nitrogen. So here, I think one of the startups, Pivot Bio, they have produced microbes that enables farmers to replace synthetic nitrogen. And with these microbes as a source of nutrition, there is no harm to the soil. Similarly, if we talk about how they generate these microbes, they use a fermentation process, which in comparison to the traditional manufacturing of synthetic nitrogen, they produce 98% lesser GHG emissions. So very sustainable as well as compared to the traditional production of nitrogen. Then we also have a startup called Sound Agriculture, and they also have a nutrient efficiency platform using soil microbiome, which helps the crops to access more nutrients from the existing microbiome. Now, I think the obvious benefit of using these microbiomes is, as we have summarized, that there is a reduction in the requirement of nitrogen fertilizers. And if we see, these companies also have big long-term targets as well. For example, Sound Agriculture, they want to replace 30% of the global nitrogen fertilizer use if it becomes big on the scale. Now, it is also generating a lot of interest from other fertilizers producers. A recent example is Yara. They have partnered with a company called Boost Biomes to develop similar microbiome products. Now, we also talk about the growers or the farmers, and as they're becoming more aware and knowledgeable, we are also seeing their increasing intent to use more sustainable fertilizer options. In fact, in one of the recent surveys, 86% of the growers said that they're actively looking for ways to improve the health of their soil. So, because of this push and also the regulatory framework or the policies, we are seeing renewed interest in the development of sustainable fertilizer alternatives such as bio-based and organic fertilizers. And the benefits are obvious: improved nutrient efficiency, improved soil health, and there's also uh, up to 32% of reduction in the greenhouse gas emissions as compared to the synthetic fertilizers. Now, it is again of for interest for many of the larger fertilizer companies. And recently, we have seen that Yara has already made an acquisition of a Finnish company, Ecolan, to expand its organic fertilizers business. The latest and a very exciting field is being pursued by the new businesses and also the incumbent players. So here, the companies like Farmer Business Network or Indigo Ag, plus many of the larger fertilizers companies as well, they are trying to pursue opportunities in farm decarbonization. So companies like FBN, they measure the carbon footprint of the crops based on sustainable agronomic practices, including fertilizer usage. And based on their scoring of the carbon footprint of the crops, they're trying to create a market for the farmers where they can sell their low carbon premium grains to the buyers who are interested in such kind of food products. Similarly, FBN and Indigo Ag, they are also helping the farmers to sell the verified carbon credits to many of the companies which are interested to reduce the carbon footprint. So now with these opportunities, they're also enabling the farmers or the growers to get premium prices for their low carbon grains. And they are also trying to add additional source of revenues for the farmers. Similarly, if you see the large fertilizer companies like Nutrien and Yara, they have also launched their own carbon programs or carbon alliance, which is focusing on helping the farmers to grow low carbon sustainable crops, which can also give a lot of financial benefit to the farmers. And in the same time, companies like Nutrien and Yara can have additional stream of services from which they can get more revenues. Last but not the least, and perhaps of most interest for our audience here, many of the global fertilizer companies, they're also exploring green ammonia and blue ammonia opportunities. And we are seeing announcements of investments in green ammonia. And one of the announcements worth mentioning is that in Saudi Arabia, Aqua Power and Air Products, they planning to invest $5 billion to produce 1.2 million tons per year of green ammonia. And apart from these green ammonia investments, we have seen the shipments of blue ammonia going to other countries as well from the Middle East. Now, with these technologies, we will have the options for greener fertilizers. But companies such as CF Industries, they are very much bullish for green ammonia for opportunities such as shipping fuel and power generation. And some of the analysts, they expect a new $7.5 billion worth of market opportunity for green ammonia for these new applications. Now, CF Industries, they also expect the margin for green ammonia or hydrogen to be nearly 10 times of the margin for ammonia going into the fertilizers. But having said that, I mean, it is much more into the future. And at the moment, the technology needs to evolve and develop further. And so all the companies are probably not as optimistic as CF Industries right now. Yara is also seeking government subsidies because green ammonia, the cost could be 2 to 4 times higher as compared to the conventional ammonia production. Similarly, Nutrien is looking into green ammonia, but they want to tread very carefully because they see high costs and inadequate prices as an impediment for the development of the green ammonia market. So it remains to be seen how this technology and market will develop in the times to come. Finally, with all these technologies and disruptions, we'll discuss what is the way forward for the fertilizer companies. So one thing is for certain, as we talk about the new technologies, most of these are helping to reduce the need for synthetic crop inputs, including fertilizers. So the fertilizer companies, they need to explore alternate business models. They need to pursue new innovations focusing on sustainable agriculture, and they need to target additional revenue streams as well. So the first and foremost that comes to our mind is the digital farming solutions or services. It's a definite route for new offerings where the fertilizer companies can have subscription revenues or platforms of software as a service. We have seen Yara and Nutrien have already made a start in this area, but the industry can also learn from the big four of crop protection companies who have already made giant strides in the area of precision farming. Similarly, outcome-based models is another option that can be pursued by the fertilizer companies. So we have already seen some of the crop protection players like Bayer and Syngenta who have done pilot projects where they offer a guaranteed yield to the farmers who are using their agrochemicals and digital farming solutions. And if the farmers do not get the promised yield, then there is some kind of rebate or discounts given by these companies to the farmers. Now, a very exciting survey done by Bayer says that 74% of these growers, they would be very interested in the outcome-based business models if these kind of solutions are being offered to them. The third one and the obvious one is the CEA or the vertical farming. And here we see that they also offer opportunities for the nutrients used in these farms, and which includes both the macro and micronutrients. So it could be a play for the fertilizer companies as we see more scale in this business. Then we have the new products as companies are already developing sustainable fertilizers, and acquisition by Yara in the space for organic farming, where they acquired a company called Ecolan. Or we have also seen some of the other fertilizer companies like Mosaic developing these bio-based products. So it is going to be an important area, though the penetration at the moment is less as compared to the synthetic fertilizer products. But in the times to come, they can also have significant volumes as being demanded by the customers. Uh, the next one is the enabling low carbon crops and helping to sell carbon credits also can be an additional revenue stream for fertilizers companies. As we have already seen how Yara and Nutrient, they have already announced their carbon programs or carbon alliances, and they're pursuing these opportunities with the farmers. And last but not the least, it is technologies like green ammonia, if they are successful and cost effective, so it can lead to altogether a new business for fertilizer companies. They can be called as, clean energy companies, where they're trying to provide green ammonia to the shipping companies or the power generation companies. So that is all from us. And thank you very much for joining, and we will be happy to answer if you have any questions. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us for the session in the Agri Nutrients Conference. And I and my colleague David will be very happy to see you in the Q&A session and to answer all your queries. Thank you.